Hello there and welcome back. Thanks for joining us again. I'm Simon Walker, Director of Training at Maxon, and we're delighted again to have for the third session this week, Master Trainer Lionel Vicidomini. Hey Lionel.
Hello.
So regular attendees and viewers will know that we just like to give you some info about these sessions and where you can see the recordings and that sort of thing. So, but in case this is the first time here and you missed the other two, don't worry, we have the recordings ready for you. And in fact, the page I'm showing right now is the events page on the Maxon website. So maxon.net, just head over to the news button and click on events and you see all the webinars that we've got coming up. And next week, we continue with our shooting for the grade, where we talk about how you can solve your grading problems before you start recording on set with choices about camera and lenses. And so we've got a 4-week session on that. And then also the following Thursday, we've got another one of our Ask the Trainers where you can turn up and ask us anything about all the software that Maxon creates. So all the different disciplines in the post-production workflows. So it can be 3D or post-production or 2D or color correction or whatever it is. And we'll be delighted to see you there. And then also all the recordings of all our webinars are available on YouTube. And we have the Maxon Training Team channel, so you can just search for that. And here are the 2 recordings for this week. Here's the 2 sessions that Lionel has already run. And if we click on those sessions, I just wanted to point out that in the description, we have the links to all the things that we usually mention during the sessions, including the project files, which Lionel has kindly volunteered and shared with us. And these include the somewhat finished version of where he's going to, and also a start version. So you can build it from scratch, or you can see how he's put the project together. And also in there are some links to some of Lionel's other training courses. And we've had a popular reaction to, hey, please, can you share where those are? So absolutely, here they are in the description in the YouTube channel. And it's actually on the Udemy site, so udemy.com. And you could get there by searching for Lionel actually on the site. But if you follow those links in the YouTube page, then actually he's going, embedded within those links is a nice discount for the actual courses. And also, it would be great, I can't not mention certification. There's a free certification test, if you like, to kick that off on the Maxon site. So you could take some of those techniques that you've learned from Lionel's courses, in fact, and just see, to test knowledge. And there's, just click on this link here, take the test now, and there's a 1-hour test. It's free, you can take as many times as you like, but it's a great idea to just check your knowledge against what we have found that the studios like to see. If you wanted to work for a studio or production company, this range of topics that we make reference to is the general range that they find useful. And if you want more information about that, or you want to chat to us more about the process of that, training@maxon.net, which also acts as a contact. So ask us anything about any of these sessions. Or if you want a further question, if you're watching the recording, further question for us or for Lionel, let us know. Fantastic. Great. So the reason I'm running through that so quickly is because Lionel's got so much fantastic content. I wanted to get over to him as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good evening for all the people around the world. So today we're going to see some things about comping in After Effects to finish our title, and then we're going to play with fire, well, in computer space, obviously, and we're going to see how we can render flames using a variety of ways. We'll be using Xparticles, but also we're going to, I'd like to show you a little bit of a software which is called Embergen, and which can feature some real-time fire using the GPU. So that will be at the end, I guess. But first, we're going to talk about comping and how I created the film. So just to show you the final rendering again of the session. So we're going to see how we can comp that inside After Effects and create all the grading and so on. And I'll try to go pretty fast with that because all the detail of comping, we have seen that on another webinar. I did last year, where I went really in details about all the passes and so on. So we're just going to jump to After Effects and see how we can work on that. So this is our final composition, and as you can see, this is something very simple. It doesn't have many bases. It doesn't have many color adjustment layer. So it's pretty simple. It's the process, the same process I use almost all the time, and which works quite well. That's why I'm using it every time now, because it works. So I'm not going to start to do it all over again. Just show you the principal stuff. So first, we have here our sequence, OpenEXR sequence, and as you can see, it's quite different from we have at the end. And you can see we have already motion blur. So for this project, I created some real motion blur from the GPU, from the Redshift, instead of comping it, because the rendering was quite fast. So I figured, what the hell, I'm going to do it in real, not in comping, and that works. So we have the whole stuff, and then it's been inputted inside After Effects, and we have here all the source comp which have been imported, and all the passes are calculated. And if we take a look at the different passes, this is the volume lighting. So this is actually the cloud we have just behind our object. This is the volume lighting. So this is the cloud and everything. And we have volume fog, which is the tint of the lighting inside the fog. The specular lighting is just the lighting, the reflection of the lights inside our mesh. And the reflection is going to be the reflection of the object altogether and with the environment. And then the beauty is the raw render with everything. So everything has been comped here in this comp here. And if I just uncheck those two, we have here our raw render. So we have just here our volume lighting, fog, tint, specular on add mode. And the reflection is on normal. We don't need any diffuse because there is no diffuse. And with only those layer here, we have everything. We don't even need the volume fog tint actually, because there is almost no tint inside this file, which is almost black and white. So in the end, we just use 3 different layers, but we can still do some stuff with it. For example, I could just use the exposure to increase the exposure on our specular lighting. So if I go very far, you can see it is much more shiny than it was. And I could also do that on the volume lighting to change just the background. If I wanted to have something more somber like that, that works. And it's working pretty well. I can see the sound problem are not getting away. That's too bad. Okay, so I will continue again for the recording, because if anybody rewatch that, it's going to work. That's really too bad. So okay, and then I'm using here, because we have our render. This is our raw render. We have this very bright spot here. I would like to just tame because it's too strong. And the trick I use is to use here a color profile converter along with the color LUT. So the color profile converter, if I just take it, I'm going to set the output profile to the Rec 709 vlog. That gives me this very strange looking tone mapping. And then I'm going to apply here our color LUT. The color LUT is going to use the base contrast we have with Redshift. It is actually the same we use inside the render view of Redshift. And I just loaded the exact same one. You can see here our file path and our filmic LUT is just here. And I use here for this one only the base contrast. So this way, we have no more clipped highlight, as you can see here in the background. You see now it's much cleaner, and we have details we didn't have earlier. So you see before, after, this makes a huge difference. But then we have something that's a bit well, it lacks contrast. So I'm going to use on top of that only looks. So Redgiant Looks, which is a fantastic plugin, but in order for it to work, because I'm working in 32 bits in linear workflow, I need to use again another color profile converter to transform it to sRGB. So that's why I have sRGB. Then I can use the Looks plugin. Then I can get back to the here linearize using this way. And if I just check this one, we can see the huge effect that Looks have. And if I go to inside Looks, I can just edit my look. And we have all the wonderful plugin preset and so on we can use. For example, I could change very easily from a different look like this one. It's really powerful. I really like it. We can go to the blockbuster and so on to have some other mood, different mood. For example, this one here, if I select this one, we're going to have some tools on the bottom here. It's going to add diffusion, saturation, colorista, and so on. So it's really nice to work with that. I'm not going to go in depth about that, but Looks is really interesting to work with. And we have here our final rendering here, our final, and you can see we have this nice look everywhere. So Looks just added many details. We have some diffuse lighting, we had some noise added back. It worked on the contrast and so on. It does make a difference between this one and this one. Okay, we have some optical deformation here, chromatic aberration, and so on. And that's it. So it's a pretty simple setup, and you have it with the file I just sent. So if you downloaded it, you should have it, but just with the first frame I exported. So actually this one, I think, this frame. And if you just render the whole sequence with the C4D file I also provided, you could replace everything and have the whole compositing with the animation and so on. Okay, so that's it about the comping inside After Effects. I will not redo that because that's not the most interesting part of the webinar, I guess. Just watch the recording again. And now we're going to get to serious stuff. We're going to play with fire. So the idea here is to create some flames on the same title. So I wanted to go much further than that, but I realized that it was too much for just one webinar. So I will just show you some tricks, some how to make basic fire, how to render it, how to comp it with the different variety of way. Okay, so let's go now to Cinema 4D, where I loaded the final title also provided in the exercise file. So this is the title only RS for Redshift. And we have here a volume measure with our title. So just to take a look, this is the advanced title I showcased yesterday with a lot of work on the texture and so on. All right, so we have this title and I'm going to set it on fire. Okay, so in Cinema 4D, we don't have many choices for that. We need to use an external plugin. we still have a pyrocluster inside C4D, which is a very old plugin. It still works, but it's not going to work with Redshift, and it's really obsolete. It does not compete with the other plugin creating fire. So I'm going to use here again Xparticle, because Xparticle is very versatile and can do smoke like we saw yesterday, but it can also do fire, it can do water, and so on. It can do a lot of stuff. So we will just use Xparticle for that. There are other plugins inside C4D for that. For that, FD Turbulence is one of the best if you want to create fire. But with the FD Turbulence, you won't have particles like we have with Xparticle. Xparticle does everything. That's the real number one feature for this plugin. Okay, so we're going to create Xparticle here, XP system. And I'm going here to delete our emitter because we don't need it. And I'm going now to create on the Dynamics XP Exposure FX. We're just going to exit this camera, and I'm going to hide the camera on the viewport. And we have here our domain. So I'm going to adjust the domain. We're going to put it this way. I'm going to increase the size, maybe a bit this way also, to give room for the smoke and so on. But I try not to make it too big. Try to optimize everything. Okay, so this is our Exposure FX. And now we need to tell here our volume measure, which I have converted to a mesh to emit fire. So for that, we just need to add on the Xparticle tags the XP Exposure FX source. And here we don't need to change anything because it's already been set up for fire. Yesterday, when I used it for creating cloud, I had to tweak a lot of things. Here it's pretty easy because I'm just going to let it with default value, and you will see it works pretty well. Just to explain very quickly, we don't need smoke because we have fuel. The fuel is going to be ignited by the heat, and then it's going to produce smoke. That's why we don't need to add any smoke. I'm just going to do one thing here on the fuel. Instead of turning the fuel to be emitted from everywhere inside our mesh, I'm going to enter here and use here the custom texture, and I'm going to load a noise so that we don't have every part of the mesh being on fire all the time. It would be nicer because it will create some chaos. So the noise here, I'm going to use the Luca, which is quite nice for all that kind of purpose. And I'm going to increase the contrast. So we have something, well, with more contrast. And the black part will be the part without fire. Then I'm going to use the animation speed. And one quick tip I can show, if we don't know how the speed is going to look like, you can just right-click here and animate. And then it's going to do a quick rendering. And then when it's finished, it's going to give us this result. So this is the speed of the animation. I think it's a bit too fast, so I will lower it to 0.5. So it's recalculating. And I think this will be better. All right, so don't forget after that to untick because it's going to take some resources on your computer. All right, so now we are already set because Exposure FX, like I told you, is already set up for creating fire. So we can just leave it this way and it's going to work. I'm just going to increase the voxel size to 6 centimeters to have something quicker and snappier. Okay, and if I just hit here the play button, it's going to render fire. And you can see this is very, very slow. So it's not a problem connection. It's just the real big downside about Xparticle. It can create fires. It create really good quality fire, but it's very slow. It's super slow, but it's working. You can see here we have a fire. I can try to zoom a little bit on that, and it's laggy because it takes a lot of resources on the computer. But we can see our fire is developing. So I'm going to stop it because it's very slow, and I know already the result won't be really good because there is something missing. That is a little bit of turbulence. When you have fire, it's going to be a bit chaotic. Instead, we would have almost like the flame of a candle. I don't want that. I want to have something more random. So for that, I will add here on the modifier, we'll add a turbulence modifier. You have to put it here in the modifier and drag it here in order to work. And again, with the default value, it's going to work pretty well. So I will go back and hit play again. It's going to be slow again. So don't worry, I have some files with some cached VDB. So we don't have to wait for half an hour to have some good results. And then when we will see Embergen, which is another software, not inside Cinema 4D, this is a standalone software, you will be just impressed at how fast it is. But still, we can have some very good results with Xparticles. And I'll just wait a little bit, so maybe there's some question I could answer.
An interesting one from Warren, which I was in the middle of typing an answer to, was, do you think it's beneficial to be a mastering After Effects first before using Cinema 4D? And it's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, believe it or not, I started 3D rather late, and I'm really an After Effects guy. So I started as an editor. I was just editing a shot. I was not a movie editor, but I did a show and so on. Then I got bored, so I started After Effects. I just loved it. Then I got bored again, and I started 3D. But After Effects taught me so much. If you really master After Effects, you know everything about pixels, about comping, about texture, and so on. This is so useful when you are going to do 3D, especially when you're going to texture, to render, and so on. So yes, I think it's a good idea to know very well after. So do you need to master it before the 3D? I don't know. That's my case, and I think it helped me. But most of the time, it's rather the people from the 3D world who learn After Effects after the 3D. But in my case, I learned After Effects before Cinema 4D. And After Effects is still almost my day-to-day tool.
I think it's a balance as well, and the more you know of both, the more you can find out about workflows. But a great way, I think, a great demonstration of your knowledge of After Effects was when you ran those compositing AOV webinars, which I'll put a link in to Warren's question, actually, and those show you how you can do some great high quality work in between the two, which I don't think you would have discovered if it wasn't for your experience.
Yes, exactly. Because I'm coming from a 2D background, I like to enhance stuff because when you do 3D, the raw render is almost never very interesting. You have to comp it, you have to work on it, to color grade it. And so I'm always thinking ahead about composition, about compositing, about color grading, and I love to do that. For me, it's as important as having good mesh, good lighting, and so on. It's just the top of the cherry. Is that the expression? I think so. The thing you have to add at the end. Okay, so we have 56 frames calculated, and I can show you now how to create flames, and then to show flames and how to render flames. And then I will switch to my file with the already cached VDB. So now I'm going to create again the same material I've been playing for the last 3 days. That will be the volume material. So I'm going to put it on the exposure effects. And then here on the volume, we're going to use here on the preset exposure effects, and we need to use the smoke for the scattering. This is actually the smoke. So for some software, it will be called density. Here it's smoke. Absorption, we don't need anything, so I'm going to close it. And emission, that will be the fire. Okay. So I'm going to load the fire. And then if I'm going to render something, it's going to work. But you can guess it's not going to look very good because we need to do a little tweaking before. But just let's take a look. All right, so this is the result. And as you can see, there is some kind of flames, there is some kind of smoke, but it's not right yet. So I'm going to do a few changes. First, I'm going to change my lighting and use a more contrasty lighting because I don't need the dome light. So now I have something much more contrasty. We don't really see our smoke because it's been lit only by the fire. Okay, so I need to see more the smoke thanks to our area light we have here. So I can just here take my area light and go to the volume tab and increase, and it's going to show, as you can see, our flames. And maybe for this one, I will show it from this. I think I will have more of the warm one and less of the blue one this way. Okay, so this is our smoke, but our flame still doesn't look very wrong, doesn't look very good. So I will work on that now. And that's inside our material. So I will work here on our emission. And there is 2 ways to do that. I think I will show you only the easy way because it's faster. The right way would be to change here our gradient. With that, you will have the most control, okay? But there is a very good feature here, which is to use the black and white gradient and just tint the result. So by using here a simple color, I'm going to take, for example, this one. It's going to tint my fire, okay? It doesn't look very good, again, because I need to tweak a few things again. So I will just untwirl that. And first, the color. You can choose, instead of a random color, you can choose the Kelvin color. This is much better because here I will have a color which is much more accurate for flames. See, it's very easy. Red flames, and going this way, almost to blue flames, because you can have blue flames, okay? And I'm going to settle for this one. Now I'm going to make appear our positive fix. I'm going to zoom also on our text a little bit. And we're going to use the bloom, because it's very important when you have fire to use bloom to see how it looks like. So it's still very crappy because we need to do a few things. So first, I will work on the smoke. And here, this will be on the scatter. So the scatter will be the illumination of the smoke. And the absorption will be the transparency of the smoke. And I think we can already work here on the absorption, make it lighter. And because it's getting lighter, it's going to let more of the flames go through. So I will just decrease the scatter coefficient also and try to find the right balance between that. And then I can work here on the emission with the scaling of the fire. So if I increase it, my fire will be more brighter. And if I decrease it, it will be not as bright. Okay, it still doesn't look very good. It could it could be okay from this distance, but here it's not very interesting. Why? That's because we have just too low value on our Xparticle explosion FX here. Because I have used a 6 centimeters value, that's very low, very bad quality. You won't get anywhere with these settings. It's just too coarse. So we have here the upraise option, which is going to use the simulation of a 6 centimeter solver, and then it's going to add details to a 3 centimeter solver. So it's very interesting because it's going to go almost as fast, well, almost as slow as the last one, but not really slower because it's going to add the details afterward. But it's going to be very slow. So what I did, I relaunched the simulation and I used here on our utilities the XP cache, which is going to cache it here on the EFX format in OpenVDB. Okay, and I just build the cache so that after almost 1 hour to have only 200 frames, I think, after 1 hour I had my simulation. So we're not going to do that right now. I'm going to load the final file, and I'm going to open here our, so this one is the continuous one. So the same one with the cache. And no, it's not this one, I'm sorry. This is the other one. I calculated 2 cache actually. All right, here it is. So this is our cache, and red means it's being read on the fly. So now if I just scrub my mouse, we can see our simulation working pretty well. And now if I use my render view and launch the rendering, we'll have a nicer result. Okay, this is it. You can see this is much better than what we had earlier. This is the same simulation with the upraise and a bit of tweaking I didn't do, but you can see the smoke is better, the flame are better. Of course, it's still a bit coarse, and if I go very near, we will see some blocks. And if you want to have some photorealistic flame in 3D, you will need with Xparticle to have a very long computing time. I'm talking about hours. It's bad, but it's the price to pay to have a good simulation. But if you look at the distance, if you're not too close, it's pretty good, especially considering it's going to be animated. Because it's animated, you won't see as much the blocks as we see here. It's already pretty fine this way. Okay, and so we have a nice fire simulation. I can show you the final rendering. I have the render file. I think everything is going, yeah, we don't have the problem anymore. Quite happy to see that. And this is the final comping in After Effects. And this is obviously with some After Effects magic. So I didn't work as much on this file as the other one. This is more of a quick test, but you can see it's okay. It looks okay. We have the reflection of the flame. The flame looks natural. We have the smoke. And the heat wave, it's something I did inside After Effects, and the result is nice. The result is okay. I did several tests I could show you because, as always, when you play with fire, you have different results every time you use it. So this is a raw render, for example. So this is a render without any comping. And here I had too much of variation of the flame, but it's still interesting to see. I did this one also. Now you can see this is 3D. We can just turn around and see the result. And the rendering was not the issue here. What was the longer to compute was actually the Xparticle part, the VDB part. The rendering was like half an hour, I think, for this one. But the caching of the file was like 1 hour or 1 hour and a half. That's very long. So that's a problem with Xparticles. So I wanted to find a solution, and I found it with the wonderful software that's been released last year, which is still in beta, but it's really wonderful. I'm not going to show you in depth because we don't have the time, and after all, this is a C4D webinar, not an Embergen webinar, but it's still very interesting to look at. I'm just going to show I'm just going to show here the Embergen web page. So this is Jenga FX, and you can buy it. I think it's pretty cheap for what it does. You can see here for only 200 bucks, you can have it with a perpetual license. That's very interesting. It's a young team, really a startup, which is working very hard on this renderer. So let's take a look very quickly. So I'm going to launch Embergen, and the wow factor is going to be right there because this is Embergen. You can see what takes hours to calculate inside Xparticle is real time here. All right, so that's just incredible. And this is a low resolution. Everything is live. We can go there and work on the parameters. I will not explain everything. I'm just going to show you a few stuff very quickly. We can here work here on the combustion this one. So here I'm decreasing the intensity of the fire. And you can see I'm pretty new with it because that's not the right value. So I'm going to show you just the one I created. Let's open a project. So yes, something I could show you very quickly. Embergen is shipping with a lot of presets, which are all very interesting. And if you followed yesterday's session, I was creating some cloud, and here is some real-time clouds. Okay, so I tried it. I did some rendering with that, and it's really incredible because it can create this stuff so easily, so fast. And if we take a look at the preview, which will be the final rendering, you see it's crispier, it's nicer than the one here. This is still a kind of preview, we can see. We have some other presets, which are very interesting. For example, the volcano is pretty fine. If I just hit render, we have a volcano. And it just looks great. And you can see here the node editor with everything you can change. So what I did with it.
Can you just say, by the way, I had a quick question from Joel, Lionel, about importing and exporting to and from Mbergen.
Yes, I'm going to talk about that. So Embergen, my final file was this one. So this is our text imported, and I'm just going to hit play and we will see. And this is the rendering. And you can see our fire looks beautiful, and it's real time. So it's wonderful, and there is even a feature that can loop the result, as you can see. This is a loop. It's really wonderful to work with. And if you want to export that, actually there is two ways. I hope I will have, yes, I think I will have the time. There is two ways to export that. You can export VDB, always the same VDB we have used so far. So the VDB you're going to import inside C4D with the Redshift Volume and so on. So you're just going to export it. You just set your frame and so on. Or you can do a rendering using the render engine inside Embergen. Okay, what we see here on the preview, and I'm going to change my camera. So it's going to render exactly that as a PNG sequence or OpenEXR sequence. And then you can comp it as a stock effect, like as a stock footage. And it's very interesting. I did both. I worked with the VDB and I also worked with the After Effects way. So to shoot it, to export it as a 2D stock footage and composite it inside After Effects. So you have this, those two solutions. Because Embergen is still in beta, we don't, unfortunately, can import animated camera or animated meshes, but I think it's going to be there very fast. There will be a new release very soon, but you can already use it for static shot, static mesh. It works very well. Okay, so I'm going to close Embergen because it takes a toll on the computer. And now we're going to see in After Effects very quickly how I used that. So we have here, this is our burning title. The audio is still okay, I think. Yeah, it looks like it.
Yes. Yeah, audio is working fine now.
Okay, small screen. And this is our file. Okay, so that's inside After Effects, and that's the render I created with Embergen. But it would be the same process with Xparticles. And here, just to show you how I comped everything. So this is again the same layer I showed you earlier. So that's interesting to see. This is the reflection layer. We can see the reflection of the fire, obviously, on our material. The specular lighting, no change about that. The emission, those are the flames, the actual flames. Then you have the volume lighting, which is now the smoke. And all together, it's going to give us our fire. If I just take a look at the fire like that, you can see it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice, but we can go, we can make that even better. So I used always the same tricks using here our converter. So same one as before, the color profile converter to change into a log file. Then I use optical glow to create the glow effect, which is very important when you're creating fire. Fire is always very glowy. So I have two, one on top of each other, using the log color space, and then the color LUT to apply back our filmic contrast. And at last, I use the Redgiant Universe heatwave to create the nice heatwave we see in the background. Then I just add a layer of trap code on it, which is going to give us simple particles. You can't even see it here because they are too dim, but on the final comp, they're going to show those are the particles you can see here. So it's always nice to add details using as many ways as you want. It works pretty well. And the final result is the one I showed you just before. I also added here some stock footage of smoke. So this is interesting because the title is 3D, the flames are 3D, but everything else is just 2D. The background is 2D, it's just a simple picture. The smoke, it's a stock footage. And the particles, it's just particular being used with some depth of field. And we have the Redgiant Universe heatwave, which is going to distort the background and so on. So this is really a hybrid way of working, because it's half 2D, half 3D to create that kind of look. It's interesting to see. All right, so I have the time to show you the other way of working, using now the Png sequence, which has been exported from Embergen. So the real interest in that is the export of the Png sequence took like, I think, 10 minutes for 250 frame. Okay, I think it was even lower than that, maybe 5 minutes. It was super fast, because it's going to use a 2D render, and it's just going to give us a file sequence. Okay, then I'm going to open our project, which is this one. And for this one, I made a little variation. I'm going to switch to the small screen workspace again. It's calculating, and this is our fire. So it's a different look. I can show here the final render again. So this one was used with the Png sequence I created. Okay, and I just use Supercomp to composite back the text on it, so to make it look like it's really glowing from the inside and so on. And looking at it, I think the fire could be better with the optical glow and so on, so I'm going to try it right now. So here we have our burning title, which is just Png sequence. So I'm still working in 32-bit, but this time I don't have any workspace. I don't use the linearized working space. Okay, that's important, because Supercomp is going to work better on just the standard sRGB workspace. We have our trap code I already showed, the same setup with the camera and so on. And here we have Supercomp doing its work. So we're going to open here Supercomp, and Supercomp is the plugin which has been developed by Redgiant to composite everything together. So it's very interesting, because it's definitely a comp plugin, and it's designed at creating the best result when you are comping stuff together. So if I just deactivate here our Supercomp, we can see the raw render, and you can see it doesn't work. It doesn't work because nothing is integrated. Because here our title is just a render. I did a solo render of my text, and then I added the fire I created here. We have here with our title. So this is the render, and then Supercomp is going to blend those layers together. So I'm going to put it right back, and we use all the settings. So this is the background. We have our title, our burning fire, and here this is our title, which has all those stuff. So we have some, well, it's difficult to see here with the tiny interface, but we have here the color correction. I'm going to try. We have the color correction, which is going to add some color correction. We can see the composite here. So this is before, after. There is not a big difference, but there is one. You can see here on the different dialing box here. And I just used the match background. So it just went to look at the color fire and added it back to our Redgiant. Then we have here the edge erode, which is going to, well, erode the edge. You can see here the result. Then we have our edge blend, which is going to blend the edge, obviously. And then at last we have the light wrap, which is very important because the light wrap is going to add the light of our flames on top of it. Okay, and all together it's going to give us this nice integration because we are just cheating. The integration exists in 3D because everything is in the same space, in the same 3D space. So the flame are going to be reflected on the on our mesh, and we have the glow effect, which is going to delete, to erode the edges of our text and so on. So your comping is already done in 3D. But here, because we are just cheating, because we have just a static image with some rendering of fire, we have to blend them together in order to work. And Supercomp just does that very easily. Here on our burning title, I think we can add some preset. We have some nice preset. If you just click here on the plus, go to the preset, and you have some nice preset you can use. And I like this one. The Hazy Cool Glow is going to give us this rendering, which is, I think, nicer than the one I just used. And you can see here, this is a preset just using a layer glow, and then here optical glow. And you can change, of course, all the amount you want. Maybe here decrease a bit the amount, increase the size to have something more glowy, obviously. And the layer glow here, maybe we can decrease a bit the amount also. And because Supercomp is content aware, it's going to, the top layer here is going to take into account all the change we make here. So here, if I wanted to tint the fire, it's going to be reflected here. Something we can do very easily here using, for example, the color correction. And here on the color correction, we can try to go for blue. So this is the gray point, more for the smoke. I would think that's fine like that. Then we will try to go, this is the black point, and this one. And we can see the result. So this is interesting. We have some magical fire. I will need to spend much more time, I think, on it to have a better result. I think our smoke here is just too much. This one also. But you get the idea, and the color tinting of the text here has changed. So you see here, on our light wrap, those are the color of the new fire. So it worked. That's really interesting because before, without Supercomp, you had to pre-comp a lot of stuff together. Everything was feasible. You could do it by hand, but it was very long. Okay, and here it just works. So I'm going to go back. Actually, I'm just going to delete our color correction to go back there. I think it's much nicer this way. And we have our composition. So something I tried with Supercomp was to comp 3D layers. I mean, with the render passes from Redshift. I wasn't as successful as I wanted. I think it's really meant to be working with stock footage. And I think using Embergen to create those stock footage is really interesting because you can create the custom fire you want, have the super fast rendering, and then comp it inside After Effects. But my definitive opinion, I would say, is I think this look is even better. Those are real flames in 3D. We have the real reflection and so on. But this is much longer to set up, to tweak and so on. And I think the result we have here is interesting, it's different, and there's definitely some more tweaking, I think, to do with that. But we have both ways, which are interesting. And I like this one because this is half 2D, half 3D. This one, on and all, is really only 2D. This is pure compositing stuff. There is only the title, which is in 3D, and this is a static title. Well, that's it. We have time for a question, maybe if you want. For those who have been courageous enough to stay through the problem of connection.
Yes, thank you, everyone. The audio recovered significantly earlier on, so thanks for bearing with us for that. And as we mentioned before, that we'll put together the local recording and the server one, so that the actual one that we post should be pretty clear. A couple of questions that we had in was related to the workflow. Kent was asking, do you do any Xparticle training?
Yes, I do. I've been using Xparticle for some years now, and I have some tutorial. I have a very complete tutorial on it, but it's in French. It was so long, so difficult to do it. I don't think I'm going to do it in English again. But yes, I teach on Xparticles. Of course, I love the plugin because it is slow when it's doing fire, yes, but it can do fire and particles and water and smoke and whatever you want. It can do clothes. It can do simulation, dynamic simulation. It's really wonderful.
And it's interesting because we had another question about when you would use Xparticles and when you would use particular.
Well, when it's really, I need real 3D, I will use Xparticles because we have particle in 3D. Particular is great, but it's still using sprite. That means it's going to show you 2D particles, and then the sprite, it's just like a sheet of paper, which is going to orient itself to the viewer, to the camera. So it works very well, but it's still an illusion. So you won't have as good result as with Xparticle, which is a real 3D particle renderer. But Xparticle is so much difficult to learn than Particular. Particular is pretty easy. We have all the presets. It works pretty well. This is here on this video a typical example where I use Particular. I mean, all the embers we can see here, the dust. This is being done on Particular because this is so easy. It would be wasted to do that with Xparticles.
This is a good point. At the risk of saying it depends,
Yeah.
Depending on how much time you've got at the end of your production cycle, whether you need to do various revs. Lisa had a good question earlier on about the idea of how fast your computer needs to be able to do something, to do a simulation like this in Xparticles.
Well, Xparticle actually is going to use the CPU, but even if you have a very strong CPU, it's still going to be very slow when doing fire. When it's doing pure particles, it's fast. But if you're doing fire, Explosive FX is slow, really slow. When you see the comparison to Embergen, which is real time, it's just mind-blowing. I mean, Embergen is like 1,000 times faster. But again, Xparticle can do everything. Embergen only does fire, nothing else.
And you have more chance to art direct in Xparticles as well, of course. And Lisa's got a fantastic follow-up question about how do you judge the physics for any particles you use in a production? Is it a real-world reference, or is it more of a creative take?
Well, both. At first, I always look a lot of footage of fire, of water, and so on. And you just realize it's very different from the point of view, from the scale, from the perspective, and so on. So yes, I use references. And then when I work on it, at some point, I just forget about the references and I art direct. So this is, for example, you see, this fire is very different from this one. And I would say, well, this one is better, I think. But both can work. This one is more cartoony, I would think, but it could work for a title. Why not? This one is more realistic, but it's still not photorealistic. it's not, yeah, it's artistic approach, I would say. If you really want to be photorealistic, you will need to be very, very faithful to the physical simulation and to inquire about the black body temperature and the combustion rate and so on. So some very technical stuff you can do with Embergen or Xparticles.
How are you? Another question from Kent about using Threadripper with a simulation in Xparticles. Is that working better than your previous CPU?
Yes, it's almost like After Effects. When you have a very strong CPU, it's going to be a bit faster. So it's still faster, but it's not incredibly faster. But actually, Xparticle is fast with just particles. If you just have particles, it's very, very fast. But Explosia is slow. Even with a good CPU, it's still slow. It has gotten better in the last year, but it still have a lot of work to do to get fast. But the result, the quality of the fire is very good. So no, the Threadripper didn't make a big difference.
And is there much GPU processing? Did it help having your 3090 card for those particles?
Again, for Xparticles, no, it doesn't use the GPU. But Embergen run only on the GPU. So yes, Embergen is not, I should have said that, Embergen is not going to work on AMD card. It's not going to work on a Mac. It's only going to work with the good NVIDIA recent GPU. So it's a bit of a elite, I would say, software. But if you do have the Swift software, go for it because it's so fun to play with fire.
Absolutely. We'll wrap up with a last quick question from Glenn, which is there any mention of Embergen working within Cinema 4D or perhaps using position pass renders? Excellent question, Glenn. The quick answer is I don't know, but that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Does Embergen work inside Cinema 4D? Is that the question?
Yes. Yeah.
No.
Or could it in the future, I suppose, is also the question.
And it won't. Maybe they will develop some kind of bridge between Cinema 4D and Embergen, but I think Embergen is so fast because it has been built with the only purpose of rendering fire with the power of GPU. So you can't integrate that with a software like Cinema 4D. We can do everything. But maybe there will be some bridge, I hope.
Quite possibly. Yes, food for thought. So thanks for the suggestion.
It's a very young company that's just starting, so I think it would be interesting for Maxon to get close to them, I would say. Something I would like to suggest them.
Well, I wanted to finish up by saying thanks so much, Lionel. This is so interesting to find out your workflow and also problems that you've solved by looking around to see if you can do stuff faster, like with the Embergen and so on. So that's so interesting to see how you then approach a problem, both from I suppose, the creative viewpoint and also from the time viewpoint, depending on how much time you've got to execute these things.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
We're delighted to have you back. Somebody asked, are your French tutorials on tuto.com, which I believe they are?
Yes, it's on tuto.com. I've been there for almost 6 years now. It's working very well. It's a really good platform, but it has an English version, but it didn't work. But in French, in France, it's pretty big, yeah.
Well, we'll post that as part of the comments in the description area of the YouTube channel. Perhaps it's an opportunity for people to learn Xparticles and French at the same time.
That would be a nightmare, I think, but yes, why not?
Why not? If you fancy a challenge. Brilliant. And like Lisa says she's glad she's learning French. So there you go. This is great stuff. Thanks also to Darren and to Jonas for answering the questions. on the questions page. So we really appreciate that. And thanks also to everyone for attending today. And if you attended all week, thanks also for carving out time for us. And thank you for asking the questions, and also asking the questions on the survey that you get at the end of the webinar. We read them all, and they're hugely useful to help us form things that we then will put on that we hope that you find useful. So thank you so much for engaging with that. And we'll definitely have you back for more of these, Lionel. We might even invite you onto one of the Ask the Trainer sessions that we have every other Thursday.
I would love that.
So would we. Excellent. Cool. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for bearing with us. Thanks for letting us go slightly over. You always knew where we would slightly overrun, but there we go. One day we'll do it in under 60 minutes. Cool. So stay well, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one of these.
Bye-bye.